This happened a few years ago. I was 32 and thought I could unwind from my software job by going camping with friends. I had camped a few times, but I wasn't an expert. We chose a spot deep in the woods, surrounded by tall trees and a shiny lake. It looked peaceful, but even as we set up camp, something felt off. The air was too quiet, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. As night crept in, we gathered around the campfire, roasting marshmallows and joking. For a while, everything seemed normal. Then I heard a faint rustling in the trees. I thought it was a deer, but the noise felt strange. It felt like someone was hiding just beyond the edge of the light, watching us. My heart raced, but I brushed it aside. I convinced myself it was just my imagination. The next morning, we went for a hike. While walking, we found something odd. There were strange symbols carved into the trees. They reminded me of hieroglyphics, but I couldn't recognize any of them. My friends laughed it off, saying it was probably kids messing around. Still, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I couldn't shake the gut feeling that we weren't alone. After lunch, I gathered firewood. While searching, I stumbled upon a small, tattered notebook half buried in leaves near the fire pit. It appeared old, worn out. I picked it up and flipped through the pages. The drawings inside made me uneasy. They weren't just random shapes, they showed our campsite from different angles. The dates were all from weeks before we arrived. My hand started shaking as I read the frantic notes written in tiny letters. They spoke of being watched and feeling trapped. Anxiety twisted in my stomach when I realized my friends had wandered off. What if everything I felt was real? My heart sank with that thought. As evening returned, I was jumpy. Shadows darted between the trees. The air felt heavy, making it hard to breathe. We finished dinner, but I couldn't stop glancing into the darkness. My friends joked about me being paranoid, but I wasn't so sure. Something didn't feel right, and I couldn't let it go. When we packed up to leave, I turned back to look at the woods one last time. They loomed over me, like they were breathing. I drove home in silence, filled with doubt about what had happened. I still think about those strange encounters. It's been years, but I can't forget the feeling of being watched. I wonder if we truly left that space behind or if something followed us out. I still feel unsettled by it all. The days passed, and life returned to normal. I tried to forget the weirdness of that camping trip. I went back to my routine, but the memories nagged at me like a bad itch. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting just under the surface, ready to pull me back into that eerie world. One night, a week later, I woke from a restless sleep. The room was dark, and I felt the familiar unease creep back in. It was just a dream, I told myself. But as I lay there, I couldn't ignore the sound coming from outside, soft whispers, almost like a distant conversation. I tossed and turned, trying to drown it out, but the whispers seemed to grow louder. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I got up and opened the front door. The chill night air hit me. The voices stopped abruptly, replaced by an unsettling stillness. I stepped outside, narrowing my eyes into the darkness. It felt like the woods were calling me back. The next day, I decided to confront what happened. I returned to the campsite by myself. My friends thought I was crazy, but I needed answers. The drive felt longer, the trees closing in around me as my anxiety grew. I parked at the edge of the clearing and took a deep breath. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find. As I walked to the campsite, everything seemed the same at first. The trees still towered above, and the lake shimmered in the sunlight. But then, I noticed something on the ground near the fire pit. It was a piece of cloth, tattered and dark, caught on a sharp branch. My heart raced as I bent down to examine it. It looked familiar. I realized it was part of an old backpack, the kind I had seen in photos of previous campers. I stood up, spinning around, searching for any signs of life. The woods felt too quiet. I turned to leave but stopped. Something caught my eye by the lake. It was a small wooden sculpture, crudely carved, but unmistakably a figure, one of a person with elongated limbs and hollow eyes. My breath caught in my throat, that S when I saw it, another notebook, placed just under the figure. My heart hammered in my chest as I picked it up. The cover was blank, but as I flipped through the pages, my stomach dropped. Scrawled inside were more of those paranoid notes. They're here. I can feel them. Each page detailed the descent into madness that I was about to drop the book when I heard a sound from behind me, a twig snapping. Instinctively, I turned around. My gut twisted as my eyes scanned the trees. A tall shadow moved stealthily, just out of view. I couldn't make out any features, but I felt the weight of its stare on me. I took a step back, heart racing. I barely had time to process the figure before I turned and bolted to my car. Questions flooded my mind. Who were those people? What happened to them? I barely made it to my car when I felt a chill crawl up my spine again. Something was wrong. As I fumbled with my keys, I glanced back at the woods. I knew I had stirred up something restless. I had to get out, but would that be enough? As I jumped into my car, I felt the panic rise like bile in my throat. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The whispers from that night echoed in my mind as I turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, jolting me from my fear, but I hesitated. What if it followed me? I looked back at the woods, its shadows loomed achingly familiar. I didn't want to leave without answers, but my instincts screamed for me to drive away. I slammed the car into gear and sped down the winding road, but the unsettling memories didn't fade. I replayed every detail in my mind, each note, the figure by the lake, and the shadow lurking just out of sight. It all felt like a puzzle missing its final piece. I had to know more about those who came before me, but how? When I finally got home, I immersed myself in research. I scoured the internet for anything related to campgrounds in the area, hoping to find a connection to the strange notes in the notebook. Hours slipped by as I clicked through forum posts and local legends until I came across something that stopped me dead in my tracks. A thread titled "Disappearing Campers" caught my eye. I clicked on it and read through the chilling accounts of people who had vanished in the vicinity over the years. The last post dated just a few months prior. It described eerie sightings, whispers in the night, and a small figure carved from wood found by a lake. The hair on my arm stood up as I read the final line, "Don't go back alone." I slammed my laptop shut and took a breath, trying to calm the racing thoughts. What if what happened before was about to happen again? I couldn't just sit here, but I also couldn't go back to that campsite on my own. I needed help, when I remembered Sarah. She was the bravest of my group and had always been curious about the supernatural. I texted her, unsure if she would believe me, but my heart pounded with hope. "Think you can join me again? I need to go back to the campsite." She responded almost immediately. "Of course. But first, tell me what happened." As I typed out my story, the night grew darker outside my window. A cold breeze swept through the open crack in the window, carrying with it a familiar whisper. I shivered. I couldn't ignore it. There was something more to this journey I had to unravel. After a quick phone call, Sarah and I decided to return together. We set a plan for the following weekend. I was still anxious, but the thought of facing whatever was out there with her by my side gave me a sliver of comfort. But just as I ended the call, the power in my house flickered before plunging the room into darkness. The whispers rose, louder now, filling the silence with a cacophony of desperate voices. I stumbled back, bumping into the edge of the table. My heart raced as I fumbled for my phone to illuminate the room. "Who's there?" I shouted, though I already knew the answer. The weight in the air felt heavier, more oppressive. The sound of scratching echoed from outside, like nails on wood. I held my breath, realizing then that I had stirred something far worse than curiosity. I had drawn their attention. "Sarah," I whispered into the thick darkness. What had I done? The darkness wrapped around me like a thick blanket, smothering the light from my phone screen. I felt exposed, vulnerable. The scratching continued, insistent and unnerving. It was the sound of something or someone trying to get in. My palms were sweaty as I gripped my phone tighter. Just the wind, I told myself, but I didn't believe it. I glanced around the room, searching for a weapon or something to defend myself with, but all I saw were shadows that danced on the walls. The power had gone out, but I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow darting past my window. I rushed to the glass, hoping to spot whatever was out there. I peered through the curtains, my breath held tight in my chest. Nothing. Just the thick black of the night beyond. I could feel every heartbeat thudding in my ears. Then I remembered Sarah. She had to be worried, too. I shot her a quick text, "Power's out. Come over." I knew it was late, but I needed her here. Minutes dragged by in silence. I listened closely, every creak of the house amplifying my fear. Then, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. On my way. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The scratching outside resumed, this time more frantic, more deliberate. I stepped away from the window, wrestling with the fear that something was waiting for me just beyond the door. I wanted to call out to whoever it was, but the whispers were back, swirling in my head. "Just breathe," I said aloud to steady myself. It was just the wind. Nothing more. I took a few steps back, glancing again toward the door, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer alone. Then, I heard a soft tapping at the back door. My heart dropped. I held my breath, listening intently. The tapping grew louder, the sound distinct and rhythmic, almost like a knock. "Is someone there?" My voice wavered, cracking under the weight of rising fear. Then came the whispers again, this time so close I could almost understand the words. Something told me to answer the door. I edged towards the hallway, creeping toward the sound. My footsteps felt heavy and slow, each step echoing in the silence. I reached for the doorknob, hesitating as my hand hovered just above it. I wanted to run back to the safety of my room, but something compelled me forward. Before I could gather my courage, a loud crash echoed from outside. The sound startled me, and I stumbled back, fear coursing through my veins. My heart raced again, and I turned to look back at the window. That's when I saw it, a small wooden figure sitting on the ground just beneath the glow of the streetlight. It was identical to the one I'd found near the lake. Fingers shaking, I stepped closer to the window. The whispers intensified. They didn't want me to see. But I couldn't look away. I squinted into the darkness, trying to make sense of the figure, trying to understand what it wanted from me. Then, silence. The whispers faded. The scratching stopped, and all I could hear was the sound of my own breathing. "Sarah," I whispered, backing away from the window. "We need to go." I turned to grab my bag, but the door swung open before I could reach it. My heart stopped. "Who's there?" I yelled, but only darkness and silence answered. I stepped towards the doorway, my pulse quickening all over again. Because whatever had been out there, it was no longer outside. And I was not alone. The darkness seemed to thicken around me, closing in like a living thing. I could feel the chill creep beneath my skin as I stood in the doorway, frozen in place. My mind raced through possibilities. Sarah? No, she wouldn't have come in without knocking. Just as I was about to turn back, a figure stepped into the stream of faint light that emerged from the open doorway, and my breath caught in my throat. "Hey!" A voice cut through the silence. It was Sarah, looking wide-eyed and breathless. "What happened? I thought I heard something. Did you knock?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. "No. I just got here," she said, glancing over her shoulder, her expression shifting to concern. "I thought you might be in trouble." A wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by a fresh wave of fear. The whispers were gone, but the scratching had returned, more persistent than before. They sounded closer now, as if they were coming from inside the walls. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, straining to catch the sound. Sarah nodded, her eyes wide. "What is that?" "It's not just the wind." "I don't know," I replied, edging closer to the doorway. "But I have a bad feeling about this. We should check the back door." Together, we tiptoed down the dim hallway, the air thick with tension. I felt like we were moving through a tight tunnel, the walls pressing in as the scratching grew louder with each step. As we reached the back door, fear settled in my gut like a stone. "On three," I whispered, my voice barely audible. 1, 2, 3. We flung the door open, and my heart sank as I gazed into the yard. Nothing was there. Just the darkness blending with the shadows of the trees and bushes. But as I scanned the area, my eyes landed on something sharp and glinting just next to the patio. "What is that?" Sarah asked beside me, her voice trembling. I stepped outside, the grass damp beneath my feet. My hands shook as I reached down, picking up the object. It was a small knife, stained and rusty, with a twisted handle. "What's that doing here?" Sarah asked, her voice edging on panic. I didn't know. Then I remembered the wooden figure. "The lake," I muttered, glancing back at her. "I found something like this near the lake." "What do you mean?" I told her about the time I discovered the first carving. I felt the weight of her gaze, urging me to continue. It felt wrong. Like it was watching me. And now this. Suddenly, the house creaked behind us. We turned, and my stomach dropped. An unmistakable shadow flickered past the window. It was there and gone in a split second, but it felt real. "Someone's inside," I breathed. "Let us get out of here." Sarah grabbed my hand, and before I could protest, we raced across the yard, hearts pounding like drums. I just hoped we could outrun whatever had decided it wanted to play with us tonight. As we reached the street, I turned to look back at my house. The window was dark. Too dark. That was when I saw it again, a figure standing just inside, staring at us from the shadows. My blood ran cold. "Sarah!" I shouted, but it was too late. Because the door swung shut, sealing whatever was inside, and I feared we were already too late to escape. We stumbled away from the house, hearts racing, the chill of the night settling in around us. I pulled Sarah along, my mind spinning with a mix of fear and dread. I could still see that shadow in the window, unblinking and still, standing guard while we fled. "Where do we go?" Sarah panted, glancing over her shoulder. The street was empty, and I could barely make out the outlines of familiar houses. "We need to find help," I said, forcing urgency into my voice. "Maybe the neighbors will know what's going on." We hurried down the block, our footsteps echoing in the quiet night. An uneasy silence surrounded us, broken only by the whisper of the wind. Every rustle and pop made my skin crawl. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, not just by the shadow in my house, but by something out there, some unseen presence. As we reached the end of the street, I noticed the Davis' porch light flickering. They should be home. Let us try them first. We approached their front door, and I knocked frantically, desperation pounding in my chest. "Mr. and Mrs. Davis?" I called. "It's us. We need help." No answer. I knocked again, but the silence deepened, stretching out like a taut string about to snap. I looked at Sarah, and I could see the fear mirrored in her eyes. "We can't just stand here," she whispered, glancing around as if expecting something to leap out of the shadows. Just then, a noise made us freeze. From the direction of my house, we heard it almost like footsteps crunching on gravel. I turned to stare down the street. The darkness that wrapped around my home felt alive, pulsating with a menace I couldn't understand. "Do you think?" Sarah started, but I didn't wait for her to finish. "Run." I grabbed her wrist and we sprinted down the block. We ducked into the alley behind the houses, the heightening adrenaline momentarily overriding the fear. My mind raced again. What was happening? And what about that knife? I could feel it burning a hole in my pocket. After what felt like an eternity of darting through backyards and avoiding streetlights, we finally slowed down, gasping beside a wooden fence. "What do we do now?" Sarah asked, her eyes darting everywhere. "Maybe we should call someone," I said, pulling out my phone. But as I glanced at the screen, my heart sank. No signal. No service? Sarah whispered, fear creeping back into her voice. "No," I said flatly. "We need to get out of here." Suddenly, we heard it again, the faint sound of scratching. It was no longer distant, it was climbing closer, like something was skittering across the pavement. I turned to Sarah, and her face was pale, eyes wide. "Let us find another way," I said urgently, turning back down the alley. But before we could take a step, a shadow moved at the far end, shifting between the houses. My heart pounded as I pointed. "Did you see that?" "Yeah," she said, her breath shallow. "No. No." I shook my head. "That can't be," but before I could finish, the scraping sound grew louder, echoing through the narrow alley. Then, a voice cut through the night, soft and chilling. "Don't go far." My skin prickled. We weren't alone anymore. "Run." I grabbed her hand and we bolted again, racing into the unknown, driven by sheer instinct. The darkness might be our only ally, but whatever lurked behind us was relentless. And as we ran, I couldn't help but wonder, what had we awakened? We darted through the alley, my heart racing with each frantic step. I could feel Sarah's grip tight on my hand, her galloping breaths mixing with the rush of adrenaline. The alley was narrow and dark, the shadows clinging to the walls like a shroud. I just wanted to find some place safe, some sanctuary where we could catch our breath and figure out what to do next. "Where are we even going?" Sarah gasped, her voice shaky with fear. "I don't know," I admitted. "Anywhere but here." Without thinking, I veered left, leading us into an empty parking lot. My shoes crunched on the gravel, and the moonlight provided just enough illumination to spot a cluster of parked cars. I thought of the door locks, the windows, and my mind raced. As we reached the far end of the lot, I realized we were standing next to an old, abandoned van. The paint was chipped, and the tires were flat, but it felt like the best option at that moment. I pulled Sarah toward it, our feet barely making a sound against the gravel. "Maybe we can hide inside," I suggested, hoping it would provide some semblance of security. But as I reached for the door handle, I hesitated. "What if someone's in there?" Sarah whispered, her eyes now darting back toward the alley. I pushed the door open, the rusted hinges creaking in protest. The interior was dark, filled with dust and a musty smell. "We'll be quiet. Just until we figure things out," I said, peering inside. I quickly scanned the seats and floor. "Are you sure?" she asked, glancing nervously at the shadows. "Do you have a better idea?" I replied, urgency thick in my voice. She nodded, reluctantly stepping into the van after me. I closed the door silently, and we crouched in the back, our breaths shallow. The scratching sound from before echoed in my head, an unsettling reminder that danger lurked close by. A few moments passed, but it felt like hours. Just as I began to settle my nerves, a loud bang rang out from the alley. My heart jumped, and I could see panic in Sarah's eyes. "What was that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," I said, straining to listen. The bang was followed by a raspy sound, like nails dragging against metal. "Whatever it is, it's getting closer." We both pressed our backs against the cold metal of the van, silence settling in thick again. I could feel the chill in my spine, the creeping sensation that whatever was hunting us might have found our hiding spot. Then, to my horror, I heard a soft thud as something landed on the roof of the van. I froze, staring at Sarah, whose fear mirrored my own. "It's on the roof," she gasped, and I clamped a hand over her mouth to silence a shriek that I could almost picture at whatever had been lurking in the shadows, now poised directly above us. The rustling continued, clawing against the roof, as if it was trying to find a way in. Suddenly, the weight shifted, its claws scraping down the side, leaving a horrible trail of sounds. I wanted to bolt, to escape this place, but the fear kept me pinned to my spot. That I glanced at Sarah, who was wide-eyed with terror. "What do we do?" she mouthed, her face pale in the dim light, and just as I was about to suggest opening the door to make a run for it, I heard a voice different from before, deep and guttural. "You can't hide from me." My stomach dropped. We weren't just hiding from a shadow, we were hiding from something far worse. And as the scraping continued, I realized the night was just beginning to reveal its true horrors. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. The voice sent chills through me, a dark promise that we were not alone. I wanted to crawl into myself, to disappear. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her eyes darting around the cramped space. "Shoo," I hissed, placing my finger over my lips. I strained to listen, trying to decipher the sounds above us. The scraping had turned to a thumping now, rhythmic and relentless. "What if it sees us?" she whispered again, panic creeping into her voice. "Then we'll have to get out of here," I murmured, glancing at the door. It felt like we were trapped in some twisted game, and I hated that I might have to play along. The voice rumbled again, growing closer. "I can smell your fear. It makes you easy to find." I felt a rock settle in my stomach. This wasn't just some animal, it was something else. Something intelligent. Without thinking, I reached for the door handle. If it came down to it, we had to make a break for it. But just as my hand curled around the cold metal, the van shook violently as if a heavy body had thrown itself against it. "Go! Now!" I shouted, adrenaline surging through me. I flung the door open and grabbed Sarah's wrist. We leaped out into the night, but the moment we hit the asphalt, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the parking lot, silhouetted against the weak light. It was tall and gangly, with long limbs and a head that seemed too large for its body. Its face was obscured by shadows, but I caught a glimpse of glowing eyes that pierced through the darkness. "Run!" I yelled, pulling Sarah with me as we sprinted into the night. We dashed across the empty lot, lungs burning, feet pounding against the ground. I had no idea where we were going, just that we couldn't stop. Behind us, I could hear it move. The creature's footsteps were heavy and deliberate, like it enjoyed the chase. Panic kicked up a notch inside me. I pushed Sarah ahead, my mind racing for any possible escape. "Find something to hide behind," I shouted, scanning the perimeter of the lot. Away from the van, I spotted a row of bushes at the end. They weren't much, but it was better than being out in the open. We sprinted toward the bushes, crashing through the plants like a pair of desperate rabbits. I pressed myself flat against the ground, yanking Sarah down with me. We lay still, our bodies hidden under the tangled branches. I could see the parking lot from our hiding spot. I held my breath as I watched the creature appear at the edge, its movements uneasy. It cast a long shadow as it scanned the area, the glowing eyes searching. "Don't move," I whispered, my voice barely a sound. Just then, I noticed something glinting in the moonlight near the van, a sharp object half buried in the dirt. It looked like a knife, and in a moment of desperation, I decided we might need it. I indicated to Sarah, "Stay still. I'll be right back." As I edged back toward the glimmer, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching me. The knife was only a few feet away when everything changed. The creature turned, its focus honing in on me. It stepped forward, revealing more of its outline, and then suddenly the ground trembled beneath me, and with that shock, I found myself catapulted back into the shadows, the world spinning into darkness. There I was, just feet from escape, flung back into uncertainty. And as I struggled to comprehend what had happened, I realized the true terror of the night was just beginning. I came to my senses lying on the ground, disoriented and gasping for breath. My heart felt like it was a drum, an endless pounding that echoed in my ears. The shadows danced as I blinked against the darkness, trying to collect my thoughts. "Sarah?" I croaked, my voice trembling. No answer. Panic surged through me. Where was she? I pushed myself up to my elbows and scanned the area. The bushes loomed large around me, framing a narrow view of the empty parking lot. The creature was gone, but I could still feel the remnants of its presence prickling at the back of my mind. I fought the urge to crawl back into the safety of the bushes and scream for Sarah. Instead, I called her name again, louder this time. "Sarah." Silence. My throat tight with fear, I forced myself to get up. I stumbled, grasping for anything solid as I took a few steps out from our hiding spot. The night air was thick with tension, and every rustle felt like a warning. "Where are you?" I whispered. The words felt foreign in the stillness, swallowed by the shadows. I had no idea where she might be, or if she was even safe. My mind raced with the possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. I decided I had to move. I couldn't stay here, not knowing if the creature was still lurking nearby. I glanced back at the van, my heart sinking at the thought of it being a trap. But I needed to find that knife. I took a deep breath and pushed through the branches of the bushes, back toward the parking lot. To my relief, I found the knife where I had seen it before, the moonlight glinting off its blade. I snatched it from the earth, the cold metal sending a thrill of determination through me. Okay, maybe I could defend myself now. But just as I was about to head back into the cover of the bushes, I heard something, a low growl, rumbling through the air like thunder. My skin crawled as I recognized it as the creature's voice, vibrating with menace. "I smell your fear," it hissed, echoing in the distance. "You're both lost. I can help you find your way." I froze in place, clutching the knife so tightly my fingers began to ache. "Help?" I muttered, skepticism creeping in. Was that even possible? Or was it just a trick to lure us out? Backing away slowly, I suddenly spotted a flicker of movement near the tree line at the edge of the parking lot. There, illuminated by the weak glow of the streetlight, was Sarah crouching, her face pale with terror. "Sarah!" I called, relieved yet terrified. But before she could respond, the creature's growl morphed into a chuckle, deep and unsettling. "Isn't it too late to play hide and seek?" It taunted, its form flickering in and out of shadow. "You're not the only players in this game." My heart raced anew. What did it mean? I couldn't let it distract me. I had to reach Sarah. "Come on. Over here," I shouted, waving my arm as I moved toward her. But the moment I took a step forward, I felt a sharp sting on my ankle. The ground shifted beneath me, and I stumbled, glancing down to see roots snaking out from the shadows, pulling me back, holding me in place. I fought against the grip, but it was too strong. Panic surged once more. "Sarah, help!" I screamed, my voice trapped between fear and desperation. And in that moment, as I struggled, I realized the game was far more twisted than I had ever imagined. I fought against the roots, pulling as hard as I could, but they only tightened their grip, dragging me backward into the darkness. "Sarah!" I shouted again, my heart racing. I felt the panic escape my throat in a desperate scream as I caught a glimpse of her wide eyes, locked onto me. "Hold on!" She yelled back, rushing toward me, the urgency in her voice a lifeline, but before she could reach me, the creature emerged fully from the shadows. It moved fluidly, contorting, taking elongated steps toward Sarah. Fear coursed through my veins as I glimpsed those glowing eyes, hungry and cold. It was a predator, and we were the prey. "Stay back, Sarah," I urged, but my voice trembled as I fought against the roots pulling me deeper into the earth. "Let him go," Sarah cried, bold despite her terror. I didn't want her to confront it, I wanted her to run. The creature paused momentarily, drawn to her brave defiance, but its gaze quickly returned to me. "You're not the only one intrigued by the darkness," it rumbled, its voice reverberating off the parking lot walls. "You've always been drawn to shadows." Whether it was mocking me or revealing a sinister truth, I couldn't tell. "I'm not afraid of you," I shouted back, though fear twisted in my stomach. The grip of the roots intensified in response, like the earth itself was conjuring something deeper. "Fear feeds me," it whispered, amusement evident in its tone. "And now that I have you, I can show you what happens when you stare too long into the abyss." With every ounce of willpower, I wrestled with the roots, my breaths coming quicker as I felt them inch closer to my throat. "Sarah! Find a way!" I called out, and in that moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Resolve. She turned abruptly and sprinted toward the van. "What are you doing?" I shouted. "Come back." But she was already there, rummaging through the abandoned vehicle. I could hardly breathe as panic clawed at my awareness. "Sarah, please." Suddenly, the creature turned its attention back to me, movement flowing through it like liquid malice. "She can't save you," it hissed, inching closer. "There's no escape from the game." But still, Sarah didn't give up. Just as I braced for whatever horror might unfold, she reappeared, clutching a flashlight from the depths of the van. "Shine this," she yelled, her voice frantic. In a flash, she aimed the light at the creature, the beam struck it squarely in the face, illuminated like a monstrous nightmare. The creature recoiled, screeching as it revealed its true form, its skin shifting like oil on water. "No light," it howled, urgency lacing its tones. "You'll ruin everything." Taking advantage of the diversion, I gave everything I had. I yanked my leg free from the roots, adrenaline coursing through me as I finally broke their hold. "Run!" I shouted, charging alongside Sarah. Together, we fled through the parking lot, powered by raw instinct, heartbeats pounding like war drums. But as we raced toward the street, we found ourselves approaching a barricade of trees lining the end of the lot, dark and foreboding like an ominous wall threatening to swallow us. "What now?" Sarah gasped, glancing back nervously. But the creature was already regrouping, its angry growl echoing through the lot, and we didn't have time. We ducked behind one of the trees, hearts pounding in unison. There we paused for just a heartbeat, gathering our strength, waiting for the creature to move again. But the heavy silence of the night granted us twilight moments to catch our breath. "It doesn't know where we are," I whispered, tracking my breathing to slow the panic. "We can't stay here," she murmured back, her eyes glistening with fear. "What's its plan?" Before I could answer, the ground quaked beneath us, the darkness around the tree stirred. The shadows twisted, some unseen force pulling at the roots of all living things thriving in the night. "We need to find another way." I gritted my teeth, the lump rising in my throat. We sprinted ahead, weaving through the trees. Just past the edge of the lot, we found a break in the woods. The moment we stepped through it, the whispers returned, swirling around us, frantic, impatient, as if urging us to stop. "We're almost there." I crushed down the urge to look back, racing deeper into the forest. Just when I was certain we'd escaped, the ground beneath us shifted again, and branches snapped like thunder. Beyond us, the creature lunged from the shadows, its elongated body moving quicker than I could grasp. "The game isn't over," it bellowed. "It's only just begun." We barreled forward, and just when hope flickered like a candle in the wind, I caught a glimpse of a clearing up ahead. "The lake!" I shouted. "We're almost there." We jumped into a sprint, pushing ourselves to the edge of our limits. As the lake came into view, the moonlight shimmered across the water like a radiant beacon. But when we reached its banks, our hearts sank. The wooden figure I recognized it the same figure I had stumbled upon before. And its eyes seemed to glow of their own accord, sending shivers down my spine. "No!" I gasped, recognizing this horror all too well. "Too late," echoed the creature, now just steps behind us. "You've awakened what was sleeping." We faced the water, our only option. "It's now or never," I told a breathless Sarah. "We dive." Without a second thought, we plunged into the lake's icy grip, submerging ourselves in a world devoid of sound. As the water engulfed us, I felt the pressure of the world above, of the shadows chasing us, fading the moment we disappeared below the surface. But even as I kicked to the surface, gasping for air, a question haunted me: what had we truly escaped? And how far had we fallen into the depths of darkness? In the weeks that followed, life returned to a semblance of normalcy. We moved on, forged memories of a night almost lost but locked away. I avoided the lake. Even just thinking about it sent a chill down my spine. But sometimes, late at night, I would find myself staring into the darkness, wondering about the shadows lurking beyond the glow of my porch light. I still think about it sometimes. I moved away to put distance between me and the woods, yet still, I have no answers. I can only wonder if we were truly free or if something else lurked beneath the surface, watching, waiting for the next players in its twisted game.